Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Chashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekedem. Help us turn to you, God, and we shall return. Renew our lives as in days of old. It seems that every few years there are events in this world that make us yearn for the days gone by, thinking that days gone by were easier or simpler or less complex. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I know that these days are not easy, they're not simple, and they are very, very complex. Like you, as I thought about speaking this morning, I knew that I did not want to give a sermon that would sound as if we were sitting at a rally in support of Israel, although we support Israel. There are plenty of those, and there will be plenty more, and there will be times where we will have the opportunity to yell out. I know that we are sharing a great deal of frustration and sadness, grief, and despair with many questions. And yet when we hear people say it's very complex, we often also wonder, what's complex? There are jihadists, there are terrorists who want to kill us and have gruesomely murdered so many of our brothers and sisters. Terror must be defeated, and those who do not tolerate our existence, they must be stopped. Our world, our people, I know, have a great deal of confusion and a great deal of sleeplessness and all of that. I've met with a few families with young children this week who have come to my office. They say, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to say. And I said to them, sometimes life is that way. We get engaged in activities and give support to those who are helping and making a difference, and that's what you have to do. And then I'm angry about the hypocrisy of the left, the naivety of the college campus leadership, and I'm very angry about the claims of disproportionality. There's a serious discussion to be had about that. And I believe we, the Jewish people and the people of Israel, can feel comfortable in that, in spite of the fact that we can never be comfortable when innocent people and when children die. I wrote the sermon and then I realized that's not what I want to say in Shul this morning. I want to tell you one little story, and I'm going to then tell you many more stories. It's about the little boy who comes to our preschool and learned that Israel was at war, and he was very, very upset, and he was very, very frightened. And he told his mom, and his mom said, "Don't be worried. Things will be okay again. Israel is very strong, and we, the Jewish people, have faith." And he said, "Okay, Mom." And that night when she brought him to bed, he was lying in bed, and he said, "Mom, can we sing Hatikva together?" And it really warmed my heart. My soul and my spirit then, however, need to bring me to Torah. It needs to bring me to Torah for a few different reasons. Two separate narratives in this week's Parsha, and because of a number of stories which I heard this week, and I want to share them. And some of them are representative of a central teaching in Parshat Chayei Sarah. And before I get to Parshat Chayei Sarah, I think it's really important that we recognize something. And that is that we recognize how extraordinary civil society has been in Israel. The numbers of people who are in the reserves, in the IDF, the numbers of people who were beyond the age of reserves, that gathered themselves together within minutes to head south on Saturday, October 7th, is just incredible. The numbers of people in neighborhoods that have gathered together to collect food and supplies for people who need food and clothing and supplies, and have brought them to the kibbutzim, into the towns where people are needed. The warehouses that grew up almost suddenly, that contains all the needs of people for their daily lives. And this was all done by average people in Israel, neighborhoods in Israel, people who knew it was time for them to get together. There was a sense of a lack of leadership from the government, but the people of Israel stood strong. They responded quickly, and they showed their love for one another. Now let me get to Chayei Sarah, because some of these stories are contained in Chayei Sarah also. Chayei Sarah, you know, begins our tradition's teachings about attitudes towards death, towards the rituals we do with the death and with dying. It teaches us the beginnings of our reverence for life as expressed in those rituals for burial and mourning. Chayei Sarah is also partially about a claim to a land, a 3,000-year-old claim. It's about mourning and crying and weeping and observing Shiva, and it's about taking inspiration from death to affirm the continuity of life. The way we treat our dead is indicative of what we think about life. These stories represent something so beautiful about the soul and the spirit, the kindness and compassion of the Jewish people and of Israelis, what's taken place on the Israeli street during these days. In Israel, every single death creates a nation of mourners. It's as if a nation is sitting Shiva together, just as it is going to war together. The times of each funeral are posted in public places and on the internet. And everyone in every community knows about these funerals. And just about every single person responds to them. The people of Israel step up and make sure that nobody mourns alone. And the funerals which have taken place from early morning through the day and even through the night have had responses from average citizens. This week I spoke to Yizhar Hess, who's the chairman of the World Zionist Organization. He lives in Modi'in. And he said that with each funeral in Modi'in, hundreds and hundreds of people line the streets with flags in silence, in reverence and respect, as the body and the mourners march down the streets. Did you read about Bruna Veliano? She was a 24-year-old Brazilian student who made Aliyah with her mother about 10 days before October 7th. And she went to the music festival. She kissed her mother goodbye. It was the first time that they were separated from each other since their Aliyah. On that Shabbat Shachor, the Black Shabbat. And she was massacred. The family, the small family that was there, put out a small posting that they would need a minyan. They feared that they would stand at their daughter and their cousin's grave alone, that Bruna would be buried and there couldn't be a Kaddish. And it's estimated that 6,000 people showed up for her funeral as she was laid to rest with kavod and with dignity. Not a single person at these funerals cry for revenge or murder. They cry for the lives that were lost, for the possibilities they represented for the future. They cried for those who are gone from their earthly journeys. Just a few days ago, on Thursday, thousands of people attended the funeral of Border Police Sergeant Rose Lubin. Rose Lubin was 20 years old. She lost her life in a tragic terrorist attack. Rose was a very talented, young, spirited woman from Atlanta. She became a lone soldier. She wanted to make a life with her people in her ancient homeland. Ironically, Rose felt that way at the age of 5, when she first traveled to Israel with her family. She said to her father, David, and he repeated this in a very poignant eulogy. He said at the age of 5, Rose was compassionate and insightful. She had a great spirit for life. She was really unique. And even at that tender age, she turned to me on her first trip to Israel and said, I want to live here. One day this is going to be my country. She was deeply aware of her bonds with her people and with the nation of Israel. And it was as significant to her as her attachment to her own family, he said. And then he said, no, the people of Israel, that was her family. In America, she was a staunch opponent of anti-Semitism, and Rose possessed numerous talents. She had a love to dance. She had a great voice. She would sing, and people would laugh and cry. She was resilient, and she was constantly challenging herself to reach greater intellectual heights, her father said. Rose was buried on Thursday. 10,000 people came to the funeral of this lone soldier as she was laid to rest. I know that there are tens and tens of stories, incredible stories, reflecting not only the courage of individuals, but something about the soul of our people. And each one of the stories is heartbreaking. Each one of the stories inspires me. Did you hear about Sagi Golan? He was a reservist. He was living in Herzliya. And he heard what was going on in the south on that very first day, and he got into his car and he drove down to Kibbutz Be'eri, which is now very familiar to all of us. Golan did not wait for a command to come to tell him to go. No, he just grabbed his gear and he got into his car and he hit the road. His fiancée, Omer Ohana, said that he gave me a kiss. And he said, I'll be back. I'll be back in less than a week. You see, Omer and Sagi were scheduled to get married on October 20th. But Sagi wouldn't return. He died in the fighting at the kibbutz after saving dozens of people. He saved dozens of people from falling into the hands of Hamas. And since Golan's wedding then became a funeral, something very special happened. You see, he served in an elite intelligence unit of the IDF. Ironically, it was a unit that focused on saving hostages. Golan had studied economics and political science, and he eventually found a job working for Taylor Med. It was a company to help people who couldn't get enough health insurance for vital care and for emergency situations. Even when not in the IDF, he devoted his life to help people in need. At Golan's funeral, there were thousands and thousands of people who showed up. And they took the flowers which had already been purchased for his wedding. He and Ohana had already chosen their first dance. Their first dance would be to the song Zachiti Le'ehov. I have one love, W-O-N. The song is quite famous in Israel. Instead of hearing the song as the song that would be their first dance, the composer and performer of that song, whose name is Ivri Leider, he showed up at the funeral. Thousands and thousands of people were there. They sang together. They sang together with Ivri, and they wailed. I'm going to conclude this part of the sermon with the song. Let me read the words in Hebrew. In English, and then Cantor Fishman will sing them in Hebrew. And when the sun is erased in the sky, and my heart drips through my brown eyes, I remember there are hands that want me near. I know that I have one love. And when the wind in the afternoon spreads little branches, and in the meantime it's pleasant, then I remember that there are eyes that see me near. And I know I have one love. And when the sun comes out above the water and another great day begins, and meanwhile there's no reason, then I remember that there are lips that won't me near. I know that I have one love. I remember that there are lips that want me near. I know that I have one love, and as we remember, I remember that there are lips that want me near. I know that I have one love.
שהשמש נמחקת בשמיים והלב מטפטף לי דרך העיניים החומות, אז אני זוכר שיש ידיים שרוצות אותי קרוב. אני יודע שזכיתי לאהוב, וכשהרוח אחרי הצהריים היא מפזרת ענפים קטנים, ובינתיים זה נעים, אז אני זוכר שיש עיניים שרואות אותי קרוב, ואני יודע שזכיתי לאהוב. And when the suns come out above the water and another great day begins, and meanwhile there's no reason, then I remember that there are lips that want me so near, ואני יודע שזכיתי לאהוב, ואני יודע שזכיתי לאהוב.
So this Shabbat, I've been looking for a way that speaks to our hearts and allows our spirits to sing, allows our hearts to open, and allows our spirit to cry. So there will be more, but we remember the fallen, the dead, the innocent people, the children who have died. And we know that every death is heartbreaking. Abraham and Sarah took their journey of life and confronted its inevitable end. And from them we began to learn about kavod as we learned about avelut. And we realize and affirm over and again that every death is a tragedy in the eyes of God. and man. And it's a central component in the quality and the values of our people. These weeks, we see this being exercised by an entire nation. But there's one last thing, and that is this. You may have noticed in the text that after Abraham buries Sarah, he gets married again. After her death, the Torah tells us he marries a woman named Keturah. Keturah doesn't appear any other place in the Torah. And so it forces all the Meforshim, all the commentaries to ask, who is this Keturah who Abraham marries? And the Midrash teaches us about Keturah. They ask, who is Keturah? And the rabbis in the Midrash give an answer that at first blush may have seemed so strange. She is Hagar. And we have to wonder, what are the rabbis trying to teach us? And let me posit, there's a few possibilities here. And amongst those possibilities is that they are trying to teach us that no matter how deep is our pain, no matter how powerful our resentments and our anger may be, no matter how much revenge we may have shown or how much hostility we have felt, the heart must leave a space for reconciliation and for hope. It's a difficult time to think about that. But as we've said in other contexts, the Jewish people never, ever, ever give up hope. It is an essential part of what we are and who we are. And as we go to war, and as we are in war, we understand that war can, because of forces beyond us, harden hearts. But as we have also learned from our most important texts, when we allow others to harden our hearts, there comes a time where we harden our own hearts. In order for us to feel as we feel, to understand as we understand, to grieve as we grieve, to love as we love, to kiss as we kiss, we must allow our hearts to have a space for something else and something different. We will continue to do everything we can do to support the people of Israel, the land of Israel, all of those organizations, all of those people who are making a difference to strengthen the land of Israel, to allow the IDF to do what it needs to do to ensure the security, the safety, and the peace of our people. We continue to pray. We continue to stand in solidarity. We pray for peace and those who defend peace. And we affirm the words of our prayer. Adonai oz li'amo yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo b'shalom. May God, who gives his people strength, bless his people with peace. Amen.